This has become a favorite topic of mine, and I give, 50 lectures a year somewhere around the country on health. And this has become my favorite lecture. And so Christians, according to Matthew 6:16, Jesus never told us to fast. He never even mentioned it. He just assumed it. He says, and when you fast, don't put on a gloomy face. He talked about what you should do when you're fasting. He never said fast. And then people asked him, how come your people aren't fasting? And he goes, well, the bridegroom's here. When I leave, they'll fast. Okay. And then as Paul, when he's on his shipwreck, he said, you need to take something before we jump out of the ship here because it's going to wreck. You've been fasting for 14 days. Now, this wasn't a fast they were all choosing. They were on a ship that was going to sink. And so they were in this storm for just days and days. And then when you look at Corinthians 9:27, I discipline my body. When we discipline what we eat, it spreads throughout everything else in our body. It makes it easier to stop those other things that we might be doing. This is my favorite verse on fasting, Isaiah 58. It's really the whole first half of the chapter. This is a fast that I choose to a man to humble himself. And this is what you get. Isn't not this fast I have chosen to break the bonds of wickedness, the straps of the yoke, to let the oppressed go free? And then repentance. Even now, declares the Lord, return to me with fasting and weeping and mourning. And so there's a place for fasting there too. But as for me, when I was sick, I wore sackcloth, fasting, I prayed and vowed. My sickness is another good time to fast. There's so many medical reasons why this is true. So I'm going to go through this then as quickly as I can. This is types of fasting, and it's complete alternate day fasting, modified fasting, 20%, time restricted. That's the one I'm going to talk about the most. And then there's religious types, Ramadan, and then like the Mormons, the way they do it, and Seventh-day Adventists. Both of these are very healthy populations. Seventh-day Adventists in Loma Linda, California, there's only 5 places in the world where people live generally to be 100, and none of them are anywhere near us except for Loma Linda, California, where all those Seventh-day Adventists live, and they live exceptionally long lives. Then this is an overview. What is that? What does fasting do for you? Everything that's good. Insulin resistance goes down, immune and cellular repair, helps reduce cancer, improves cell metabolism, promotes weight loss, reduces oxidative damage, boosts the brain function. That's what we're going to look at today. Brain function by fasting. It's kind of amazing for us boomers that are getting to the place where we want these brains to keep functioning. So this is survival. This is a little mouse. You let him eat all he wants. And after they live on an average, say 25 months, and you restrict them a little bit, restrict them more, and you restricted them 85 kilocalories per week, and they live to be 50, a little more than 50. So they almost double their lifespan. So if you want to double your lifespan, all you need to do is restrict how much food you eat, and you can live longer if you are a mouse. But since we don't happen to be mice, we do live longer. It's just not that long. You look at a bacteria, they can increase 2, 3, 4, 500% lifespan. It looks like we can improve ours, but it's more in the 10 to 20% realm, maybe a little bit more. All right, how do we do this then? Why does this actually happen with us? And what's going on? I'm going to show you my favorite. I hate to share this really, to give it to other people, because it's my favorite diagram in science. And this is a paper that was done, you can see here in 2019. It's pretty complex, and so I'm just going to beat my way through this for about 5 minutes. I'll explain to you what we have here. So this square is a brain cell. There's the brain. This square right here is a liver cell. And then inside is a mitochondria in both of these. And then this is the interior of the mitochondria. This is where power is made that keeps us moving. Same thing in the brain. There is a mitochondria that makes energy, and this is the inner wall of it where it's all being made. So here is then what we're going to eat. So you eat, well, let's talk about this first. You go on a fast and you don't eat. So there's no thing coming in from the gut. The gut pours into the portal vein. The portal vein then just flows. It goes to circulation throughout the body. And then all of the cells of the body get what they need from the vessels in our body. 2 things we're going to talk about today, is if we can get to it all. But fasting. What does fasting do? What does a ketogenic diet do? And then we might get to these other two over here. So what happens when we fast is that fatty acids go up and sugar, and most importantly, insulin goes down. So you eat a bunch of fat. This is a fatty acyl-CoA. So that means a fat that's connected to coenzyme A, and it's floating around your body. And it gets taken into the cell. But this fatty acid is dependent on this enzyme right here, carnitine palmitoyltransferase. This is what lets those fatty acids get into the mitochondria to be able to burn them for energy. What's interesting is if you have a lot of insulin and you're eating a lot of sugar, this enzyme right here just goes down to nothing. And so you're eating all this fat, you're trying to burn it, but your body doesn't burn it very well if there's sugar around. It prefers the sugar to the fat. The interesting thing here is if you do start either going on a ketogenic diet, you don't eat sugar, or you're fasting and there's nothing there, then all of a sudden, this enzyme, carnitine palmitoyltransferase, opens up. And all the fat that you have starts flooding into the cell. And when you get in the cell, then, this is acyl-CoA. This is a big, long fatty acid with coenzyme A hooked to it. And then it breaks it down to acetyl-CoA. Acetyl-CoA is 2 carbon groups with CoA. It's the central part of all metabolism for energy in our body. You eat glucose, 6 carbons, it breaks it to 3, breaks it to 2, and you have acetyl-CoA right there in the middle. And it goes into what we call the TCA cycle, where it just breaks it down even more. What happens here then is that this fat comes flooding in. And we have this acetyl-CoA, and then it combines 2 of them to acetoacetyl-CoA. And then all of a sudden, there's all the CoA's gone. We flooded it out. We're out of CoA. So what do? You take hydroxymethylgluteryl-CoA. This is an enzyme. And what it does is it breaks the CoA off and lets the CoA go back here to use. What does it end up with in the cell? It is acetoacetate. What is that? It's one of 3 ketones. What is a ketone? Well, that's what we have here. It's a 4-carbon fat, essentially. And so this acetoacetate can break down into beta-hydroxybutyrate. Those are the 2 we're interested in. And then it can also make acetone. That's nail polish remover. Yeah. And so you have a little baby and it gets a fever. And within 12 hours, the little body's not big enough to do anything. They're running out of sugar. They start burning fat through this mechanism. And you smell this sweet acetone on their breath. Or you start fasting on an Atkins diet and people go, your breath stinks. You smell like nail polish. Well, that's because you're making this acetone. Now, here's the interesting thing, what God does. And it's fascinating to me how this happens. It's things you can't explain through any mechanism, through normal evolution. It's hard to come up with these. What's interesting, here's this acetoacetate. Funny thing, the liver can't use it for energy. So it's just there. So it has to start shunting it out quick as it can into the blood system. It can be used a couple other places. It can get shunted off in here into the brain. And then again, here is this enzyme that lets it flood right in, also with the muscles. So who's interested in ketones? Bodybuilders. We need more ketones to get more energy to our muscles. But it's also important for us 50-somethings that want to have our brain functioning, because the brain burns ketones for energy as well as sugar. So what happens here? You've got this beta-hydroxybutyrate and acetoacetate, and then again, they go to acetyl-CoA, and then it breaks off one of the 2 carbons, and you have acetyl-CoA. And what's acetyl-CoA do, whether it's coming down from sugar or coming in from fat? It goes into the TCA cycle, and you make huge amounts of NADH. NADH goes to electron transport, and you start spitting out ATP, adenosine triphosphate. That's the energy that keeps our body moving. And so isn't that fascinating that when you fast or you go on a ketogenic diet, that your body is better able to burn fat than it is if you have a lot of sugar and insulin around. And what it does is these ketones go into your brain and they give your brain energy and they give it fuel to function. Oh, it's exciting. Here's the most interesting part. Suppose you're just eating a regular diet and you still want ketones, because the next slide is going to show how important they are. You can eat medium chain triglycerides. They're really short. They go right into the cells in the liver. They go right past this enzyme because this gatekeeper only works on the large one. You get the short MCT oil, it goes straight through into the liver. You have the same process of very quick action, and you have a buildup of ketones. You can make ketones just by taking a little bit of MCT oil. Where do you get that? Coconuts. And then you can also just eat beta-hydroxybutyrate. This is what the muscle builders do. They just take, it tastes nasty, but they'll just eat this stuff to make ketones to build up their bodies and be stronger and healthier. That, to me, is the most exciting diagram in the world. The next one is a little complex, but it's as exciting. This just explains what's going on besides what we just talked about. So here we have ketones, and we just said that these ketones can make alternate sources of energy. But look what else they do. They go over here and they increase mitochondrial function. They can go down here and H2 receptors. Through decreasing HDAC, they can protect against ALS. They can work against Huntington's disease. And then here's the most important part. And I wish I had a diagram or time, and I didn't put it in here because I don't have time. But it decreases mTOR, the mammalian target for racemide. And what does that do? That is the enzyme that causes our body to eat itself, macroautophagy. Your body then has these little cells, and it starts going around and it captures junk in the body. Another cell attaches to it that puts digestive enzymes in there, breaks it all down, breaks open, and spits out good proteins, fats, and amino acids and sugars. And macroautophagy is amazing what it does. SIRT1 then also increases BDNF, brain-derived neurotrophic factor. It makes new brain cells. When I was in college drinking heavily, before I was a believer, and they said, don't drink that, it's going to kill 1 million brain cells, you'll never get them back. That was a lie from the pit. You can make new brain cells, and one way you do it is this. And then SIRT1 also decreases apoptosis, amyloid beta, the stuff that causes or is certainly associated with Alzheimer's, it decreases that. And then mitochondrial biogenesis. So it makes new mitochondria. It builds them all. And so that's my second favorite diagram. I wish I had more time to talk about autophagy itself, because it's autophagy. It's we eating ourselves, and we eat the junk first, and we take the broken pieces of DNA and proteins, carbohydrates and fats, and we digest it and spit it back into the cell with fresh new things to build with. Two more things to talk about before I quit here. And so this is just looking at weight management. And this shows right here, this is a nice forest plot, favors intermittent calorie restriction and favors calorie restriction. So all this is doing is juxtaposing, I'm going to cut down 15% of my calories, or I'm going to go on intermittent fasting. I'm going to stop eating either every other day, or I'm going to reduce the amount of time I eat. I'm going to start eating at 10 in the morning, be done at 4 in the afternoon. That gives myself 16 to 18 hours to digest and to burn up the junk that's in there. So stopping eating early, eating later in the day is the best method to clear your brain, clear your body of all unwanted junk that's building up in there. And I had this one study, though I have dozens and hundreds of them. This compares completely. How does this work? If I just eat less, is it beneficial? Yes, just eat less. But if you just eat less in periods of time and give your body time to fast, and don't break fast early and don't eat late, you get this benefit. And then last thing is cancer reduction. And so this is looking at ketogenesis, the role of calorie restriction, ketogenesis, intermittent fasting, and the progression and metastases of cancer. A systematic review. Now, you love this forest plot here. Generally, when you do a meta-analysis, it's really messy. There's stuff over here, there's stuff over here. It's not clear at all. This is crystal clear. I mean, there's one study here that shows it didn't work out of 20 studies. That's fantastic when it comes to science. They don't just usually line up this well. And then this is looking at the spread of the data. This is the average here on this forest plot. This is the spread of the data. Almost everybody in this study had benefit. Almost everybody in this study. Almost everybody in this study had benefit. This one, 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 all of them. It's not just an average got benefit, but most of the people in the study got a benefit, which is not always true. And so then this shows the average. And you can see it's significant. The p-value is 0.000 something after that. It's just extremely significant difference. And you can tell that by just looking at the data here, how significant it is. So is fasting important? Geez, it's amazingly important. So this is the conclusion then. Fasting provides many spiritual benefits. We didn't really talk about those briefly for a minute. Science agrees. There's many physical benefits. Increased ketones. That's amazing. Decrease in weight, reduction in cancer. But what it really does also, it decreases inflammation. If I start getting inflammation, I used to get inflammation in this knuckle when I was like 20. Thought, what's going on here? And I started going on a low inflammatory diet. I can tell when I screw up because it's 66 now, it starts bothering me again. And so I go back to things like this, intermittent fasting. I try and eat not before 10, and I try not to eat after 4. Okay, that is my presentation speedily. Questions, comments? Are you going to moderate this?
Yeah, I'm good. Yeah, no, I got it. Thank you, Dr. Painter. I believe Joseph Fleckner has a question to start us off.
Yes. Do you know what's in hydroxycut?
Hydroxycut. I have at one time. It's been 10 years since I looked at it, so I don't recall what's in hydroxycut. And but when I looked at it a while back, it does have some efficacy. I've seen hydroxycut work. I've seen some of the studies on it, and so I do think it does have benefit. I don't recall right now what the mechanism was.
Could it be beta hydroxybutyrate?
I mean, it could be. I just don't recall that being in there. But the idea of having beta hydroxybutyrate in there, I mean, I just had a brief time to show you the multitude of benefits. But ketones do amazing things. And one of the things is they suppress appetite. And so you tend to have less urges to eat. So it certainly could be part of it.
Are there any other questions for Dr. Painter? Jim, I had one on that figure that you had with the meta-analyses as well. I don't know if you can pull that back up. I believe that was your figure 2. If you could maybe go back to your slides and present that again. I'm not sure if you have that ability or not.
Yeah.
Yeah, can you go? That was it. Sorry.
Right
no, it was second to the last slide. Second to the last, that one. So this one here. Can you unpack this a little bit more? I'm not sure that many people are familiar with reading these meta-analysis slides, but can you maybe distinguish, what that one is from? Just kind of walk us through kind of what this figure is actually representing.
Okay, these are all the individual studies that were looked at in this meta-analysis. This right here line is a 0 line, which means it's not beneficial and it's not harmful. It didn't seem to do anything. And so when you look at this, each study then, this is the average of the data. This is the spread. The line is the spread around the data. And so what you're seeing here is then this study showed a favorable benefit for this study at reducing risk. And so in this study in 1994, this one gave a very positive result. And then this little triangle here is just the average of all of these studies in one. This shows the weight. Which study was given the most weight? You can see this little study here was given 6%. So that's pretty good. But you look at most of these, and so the ones that would have a really long spread of data, they're given a little bit less. Like this one that's spread out, it's not considered as much. And so these are great ways of taking all this data out there and looking at it as one piece of data. And what usually you see here is not this clean. It's usually that a lot. This has one study that showed that it was not beneficial to fast. Every single one of these other studies shows it's beneficial. Here's one that was right on the line that showed, it didn't show it was beneficial or not beneficial. It just came up with a 0. So that's the one line right there. So this is, to me, an unusual finding in science where you get this much consistency in the studies that are done. And you can see they started in 94 and went through 2013. That's a lot of studies, a lot of data.
And so as a meta-analysis, these are sort of layered on top of each other, looking for areas of agreement or common measures that are used across the research. So
right.
Any other questions for Dr. Painter?
just a specific kind of tumor that's being prevented?
I don't remember. You can't look at a specific tumor because this is a meta-analysis. So it's a systematic review where they've come up with a certain parameter of things they're looking at. And apparently in this one, they were just looking, is there calorie restriction involved? Is there ketogenesis involved? Is there intermittent fasting involved? And it's progression and metastases of cancer in animal models. So my guess is that it has to include a variety of cancer types in this model. But that's a good question. You'd have to go back and dig into the meta-analysis to see what they excluded and what they included. But my guess would be is that this is a variety of types of cancer. Anything else? No questions after all that data?
Well, we are also at our time as well. So I do want to thank Dr. Painter and Dr. Strand, and thank you for attending our session.